Hi, you want to give the
I'm perfect.
cushion? You want to give him the cushion?
Yeah, actually, you can have the cushion. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Ali with his Community Wellbeing Show, and hope you're all well and keeping fit. We're just about to go and start our show, and this is something that I've been meaning to discuss for a while, because the last 4 months we've been focusing all on COVID, and rightly so, and everything still remains social distancing. Make sure that you wear your masks, especially when you're doing your Eid shopping and general shopping. Whether you're going to your grocery store, make sure that you do wear your masks. Otherwise, there can potentially be £100 fine if the police do catch you without a mask. And obviously this Friday, inshallah, we'll be all celebrating Eid together. And again, the mosques are ensuring that social distancing measures are in place. So today we are going to be talking about an issue that has been going on now for in excess of 70 years. And if anything, it is going worse rather than better. And today we are going to be focusing on the human aspect of last year's decision by the Indian government of revoking Article 35A and 370, which actually removed the special autonomous state that Kashmir had since its inception and since 1950. And what that entitled Kashmir to do was that it allowed the Kashmiris to have its own identity, and it was unique, and it was completely separate from all the other Indian states. And in order for them to remove that, they had to get the bill passed by Parliament, and 2/3 majority they held. And last year, 5th of August 2019, the Article 370 was actually revoked, and we're going to be focusing on the human aspect. So as a result of the huge hundreds of thousands of forces that are now patrolling the streets, the fact that young children aren't able to go to school, the fact that there's no recourse in the local and the national courts, there's no United Nations army there or observers to talk about and highlight the human abuses that are taking place on a regular basis. The fact that the Wi-Fi, the broadband, the journalists aren't able to operate is a real worrying sign. And because of this blackout, it's very hard to find out what is really happening. And today I have the pleasure of introducing someone who has close family connections in Maqbooza in Indian Kashmir, and he's going to be sharing their story. So this program is all about giving them their voice. So first of all, welcome Brother Liaquat Loan to the studios of Radio Aap ki Awaaz. And it is a sad state of affairs, but before we actually go to the human aspect, obviously I've sort of briefly highlighted to the listeners about what happens when you revoke Article 370, but in your own words, just a bit of a sort of a 3-4 minutes, just a bit of a dialogue really in terms of what happened and what's the impact really as a result of revoking the clause I've just mentioned.
Okay, first of all, Brother Ali, thank you very much on behalf of 20 million Kashmiris living in Jammu Kashmir state for Aap Ki Awaaz Radio to raise the voice of voiceless Kashmiri nation. You have raised a very valid point in terms of Article 370 and 35A. The abrogation took place 5th of August 2019. These two articles give a special status to the Jammu Kashmir state with their accession to India, which happens in 1947. Now, after this abrogation, when Modi government did this abrogation,
yes,
they introduced their own laws, and what happened to the Kashmiris afterwards, I can give you an example of the COVID-19
yes,
lockdown which you and me experienced here in the streets of United Kingdom.
Yeah.
Luckily, we did have all the facilities towards the medical assistance, food and shelter. But being a Kashmiri, me, myself and the rest of 70% of my family living in
yes,
Srinagar and Jammu, they don't have those facilities. To go to the hospital, to go to the market, to get the food. They can't send their children to the school, not only because of the COVID-19. Long before the COVID started, they could not send their boys and girls to the school because of this inhuman act which took place on 5th of August.
Sure.
So when I say lockdown, the lockdown which we experienced here in the United Kingdom was totally different in the streets of Srinagar.
Yeah.
I can give you an example. There was
Please.
complete lockdown of internet, complete lockdown of food, complete lockdown of all the health services. The pregnant woman cannot go to hospital to get the medical assistance. The elderly patient, they cannot get their treatments. And all food shortages make those vulnerable Kashmiris to live under the complete siege of. And on top of that, not only the COVID-19 was covering the Kashmiris, but there is more than 1 million army present in Kashmir. Every one Kashmiri has 8 soldiers standing on his head.
So one Kashmiri, Indian occupied Kashmiri versus 8 armed, heavily armed forces.
Heavily armed forces.
Wow.
This is the worst example in the world, in this civilized world. So how can a person can live? Like first time when I spoke to my family in Srinagar was after 3 to 4 months after this lockdown, and the only 2 minutes talk I can have with them was, okay, we are okay, and they told me in my mother tongue that I have 2 policemen on my right and left.
Wow, really?
So I can't tell you more than that. Thank you very much. Goodbye. This was the conversation I have with my relatives.
Thank you, brother. We are going to come on to the human aspect, but I think rightly so. One of the listeners, Brother Ashik, has said it is not Indian Kashmir, it is Indian occupied Kashmir. So I think, yes, absolutely, we agree to that. Before we get on to the human aspect, in terms of before the 5th of August 2019, Indian occupied Kashmir had a special autonomous status given to it in, I think it was 1950s. And as a result of removing that, so, apart from defense, apart from, business, international business, every other thing, whether we were talking about education, whether we're talking about, preservation of the Kashmiri identity, whether we're talking about jobs, whether we're property, these were all under their control. They could sort of preserve that. They could, make legislation in order to prevent anyone else coming in and taking those jobs, property, in order to preserve their status. Just sort of elaborate a bit more around, what actually meant by removing Article 370 and what did that actually protect the Kashmiris with their culture and their way of life?
Yes, good question. The Article 35A was introduced in 1927 by the Maharaja, who was the king of the state at that time. So 35A gives the Kashmiris their national identity, and it can protect their national identity by nobody else can buy a land into his state. This is a protection. And the Article 370 was introduced by the the Indian Parliament in 1947 when they have temporary accession with India. The Maharaja did this, enforce this Article 370 to make his population, his Kashmiri nation protected from the invasion, because at that time they promised that there will be a referendum, there will be a say of Kashmiris. So they will decide either they want to be independent or they want to live with Pakistan or India.
Yes.
But both countries, according to the United Nation Charter, they are supposed to facilitate Kashmiris, not dictate the Kashmiris what to do. First of all, that's the political thing. I would give you the example, like you said, education, health, and what affects the 5th August abrogation on the normal life of common people like me or somebody else in the Indian occupied Kashmir. The schools are completely shut since last year. Hospitals closed. The Kashmiris, they have only their main income resources trade of fresh produce, mainly apples, and tourism. Since last 11 months, all the tourism is closed completely.
Yes.
And unfortunately, the farmers, they have to destroy all their apple crop in their field because they couldn't sell it.
Sure.
So now this is the only income they can receive in that year.
Yeah.
So since last 11 months, they have no education, they have no medical facilities, they have no food. So how can they survive? Now the problem is there is a food shortage, there is a medicine shortage,
yeah.
and the other impact they have on their health is the medical, psychometric, psychologically,
sure.
they are affected medically. And the women who are pregnant, they need medical assistance on daily basis.
Absolutely.
They can't have it. Elderly patient, they need medicine to survive. They can't have it. So these are the major, on human grounds, I would say that these are the main factors we are suffering in this lockdown. As a whole, the Kashmiri nation is suffering since last 72 years.
Absolutely.
But these last 11 months are the worst in the history of the Kashmir, when they are under complete siege of Modi government, and he's introduced 1 million army in Kashmir.
Thank you. So for the listeners that are just joining in, this is Radio Aap ki Awaaz. Please listen to us on www.aapkiawaaz.co.uk. You will also find us on the app Radio Garden. Please, if you want to share any stories, if you know of any emotional, the human impact, the family impact on what's happening in the Indian occupied Kashmir, please, the number for the studio is 01216829735. Brother Liaqat has given a bit of a context into what the removal of those articles were, and also now we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking about that. So if you want to ask any questions, he is here, and we will try to do our best to answer that if we can. So moving on now, Brother Liaqat. So, I suppose the opposing now being this is a radio show that we are going to give both sides of the story, really. So we're impartial in this. So the opposite story from the Indian government is that this territory has been hijacked and been used by terrorists, and also that they were quite using the misnomer that they've done this for protecting women's rights, because women, if they were to marry a non-Kashmiris or someone from outside of the Indian occupied Kashmir, then that person, the groom, the husband, wasn't able to then come and buy property, and in essence you're basically denying the women's rights. What's your response to that?
Okay, thank you very much. You gave me this chance to give me
Yes.
my view on this. First of all, when we say terrorist activities, I would like to pay your attention towards this last 70 years, the army actions in Kashmir,
Sure.
where these are not my facts and figures. I will give you the reference of Amnesty International, United Nations Human Rights
Please.
Watch, okay? And I would like to pay your attention and your viewers' attention, no matter which color and creed and nationality they have. They need to go back to the United Nations website and read the report of Human Rights Watch 2018 and 2019, where they have summarized how many human rights violations has been occurred in Indian occupied Kashmir. More than 10,000 people have the mass grave. Their loved ones don't know where they are. More than 1,000 innocent children have been the victim of pellet guns, and these children are between age of 7 to 12.
Yeah.
Okay, thousands of women have been raped, and thousands of people are in the prison without any charge or any trial.
Yeah.
And they have introduced these Public Safety Act, TADA and AFSA, Army Force introduced their own acts, and the people are in the jails, in the prison in last 10, 20, 25 years without proven any criminal record or any crime on them. They are suffering. And what's going to happen with their families if I'm the only responsible
Absolutely.
for 5, 6 of my family members and I'm in the prison?
Yes.
What is the rest of my family going to do? Other example I will give you. I must give you the example of doctors and engineers in the university. They have no future. They have no future because if the army comes and kidnap my father,
Yes.
they rape my sister in front of me, what option do I have left to do? Definitely the violence is the only option I will go through. If the Indian government wants to stop that
Yes.
violence in the streets of Srinagar, they must stop the violence on the innocent people of Jammu and Kashmir state. If they want the Kashmiri live with the peace and harmony, they have to take their army back
Yes.
from the streets of Srinagar. Otherwise, the people, they are fed up now, they have no
Sure,
future,
sure.
they have nothing left, their houses have been burned, their loved one has been killed, and their children has been the victim of pellet guns. They have nothing left. The only option they have left is to go towards the violence, which I don't want my brother, my sister, or any of my family member take the guns. But Modi government has to think about it. What option they have left to the Kashmiris? They can call them terrorists, but how can they call them terrorists when they are fighting for their rights on any? They have no option left. So I'm a Kashmiri. When I suffer, I have no option left. You have seen the doctors and engineers and professors
sure.
from the universities. They have no option, and then they join these militants. Why? Because they have been suffered for years and years. Nobody listened to them. International community, totally silence. Their neighbors, totally silence. They can only cry, and I can suffer. I can see my family suffering. What can you do? If I am in the street of Srinagar, I will not look into the United Nations. They will come. I will do something about my family.
If I can come in there, Brother Liaquat, I absolutely agree in terms of what you're saying about, when you are left with no choice because all your human rights are completely dissolved. You've seen your son, your husband being taken to prison for 2 years without any kind of charge, and you've seen maybe your wife, your daughter being raped. The last thing that you want to be doing is taking up arms. But if you do, we know at the moment anyone that takes up arm and is of a Muslim background, we lose all moral high ground. And the only way that we can actually get to an agreement is by bringing in United Nations, bringing in the United Kingdom government and the United States. And if India keeps on saying that these are Muslim terrorists, these are terrorists, it is very hard for us to have the moral high ground. So what's your thoughts about, for those people that are sort of labeling that these are Muslim terrorists, these are terrorists, how are we going to get these international partners like the Presidents Donald Trump, Boris Johnson and the United Nations to come and fight for our cause?
Okay. First of all, we need to understand that Kashmir dispute or Kashmir issue is not a religious war.
No.
It's the war of human rights violation. The Kashmiris are fighting for their basic rights.
Sure.
There is no fight between Hindu and Muslim. No. Kashmiris have Hindus, they have Sikhs, they have Muslims, they have Christians, they have Jews living together. Before 1947, they were living like a family. I have my grandfather who told me that whenever a Sikh or Hindu died, we used to go to their funeral and they sit on the side of their family and we do all the funeral services. When somebody died in our family, they come to us and do the same.
Yeah.
This is our problem. We created this friction between Hindu and Muslim. I would love to those Kashmiri Pandits and those Sikhs who are living in the Jammu Kashmir state. They have the same right like I have.
Absolutely.
It's their country, and Kashmir is a very diverse culture, and we live with all different communities. There is no war between Hindu and Muslim. There is a war between war for the basic human rights.
Sure.
We are fighting for our freedom,
Yeah.
which has been snatched in 1947.
Sure.
So this is not a dispute between a religious dispute.
Yeah.
This is a world recognized issue, which is in the United Nations in last 72 years. And I wonder how the international community can keep silent and they just give the lip service to us in your United Kingdom and Europe. Okay, we will resolve this issue. Somebody say this is a bilateral issue. Somebody say this is a trilateral issue. I want to ask them, this is not bilateral or trilateral issue. This is the issue of the 20 million people's life. They are suffering since last 72 years. And I cannot just say that let India and Pakistan decide my future. Why? I am the resident of that country. If we can have a referendum, if we can have a say in United Kingdom, we can have a say in Scotland. Why can't we have a say in the streets of Srinagar? Why can't I decide my future? Why somebody else dictate me to join somebody? I am the person of that country. I'm the citizen of that country. This is my basic and birthright to decide my future. And this right has been recognized in the United Nations. And who are the India dictating me to do what I want to do?
So if I can come in there, Brother Leah, because it's the last point I make before we get on to the human aspect of it. I know you are advocating for Kashmiris to have a referendum and decide their own fate. And but unfortunately, not everyone of a Kashmiri background is of a similar mindset, because some people are saying that we want to be independent. Some people are saying that we want the United Nations and the other countries to decide. Some people are saying that we want to be connected and be a state of Pakistan. So unless the Kashmiris have one voice and a clear voice, then I think this issue about having a referendum is going to be far-fetched.
Yeah. So this should be decided by Kashmiris, that where they want to go. If they want to go with India or Pakistan, I have no problem. But what if they want to be an independent country? What's the problem? Then India and Pakistan are bound to facilitate them.
Sure.
They have promised to United Nations in 1948, 13th of August 1948, when the resolution was passed, they had these three options to choose. So now they cannot dictate us from Delhi or Islamabad. They have to facilitate us from Delhi and Islamabad and make an environment and make the things happen. And it should be proved with their action that we are there to facilitate the Kashmiris to decide their future. And we should be the choosers, not somebody else dictate us.
Thank you. That is Brother Liaqat giving us a bit of a context as to what the future should be and also what has happened since last 5th of August 2019. We're now going to move the conversation on in terms of what is actually happening on the ground of Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir, and how are the individuals, the families are suffering both personally in terms of security and their respect, but also in terms of economically and their basic freedoms as well. So I'm going to sort of talk about the basic freedom that we have, which is that, how do we know what is actually happening when there's a complete blackout? So we don't know, there's no Wi-Fi, the mobile comms are down, there's little or no communication coming out. So what do we actually know? How do we get our messages to them and vice versa? Have you been successful? I know you previously mentioned that you had a 2-minute conversation. What's the situation on the ground at the moment in terms of getting their voice out here?
Well, the first thing I would like to say is, last time when the big so-called democracy Indian government said, oh, we have these European delegates coming inside the Kashmir and they have visited, everything is normal, everything is okay. But those couple of people were picked up by themselves and they have been shown the army barracks, the army area, everything looks fine. But they didn't go inside the streets, how the people are suffering. I can say to you, after 3 months protest here in United Kingdom and all over the Europe, what they did was the ease of internet, and the service is so poor, you cannot talk. You talk and it disrupts.
Sure.
You make a phone call, it disrupts. And some areas are still in Srinagar and its surrounding, I would say around 10-20 mile circuit in radius area is still complete under the lockdown. But what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to make my point here is, if we want peace and harmony in Kashmir, we have to trust the Kashmiris. Let's say India is making a point, okay, we are trying to keep this condition calm. But look at the political elite. These political leaders which have been with India since last 70 years, they are in the prisons. All those separatists, they are in the prison. So what difference and where is the democracy there? If you give me one example, I will say, okay, everything is fine. Your old political leaders are in the prison, teenage boys in the prisons, and you cannot make a single voice in the streets of the Indian occupied Kashmir. Where is the democracy? Where is the freedom of speech? Where is the freedom of expression? And you call yourself the big democracy in the world. And this, especially the COVID-19 situation, they use this as a cover because nobody can go there and see what's actually happening. If India is free to show the world, I would like to see BBC World going in the streets of Srinagar, Sky News going into the streets of Srinagar and make the reports. I would like to see my local MP go and see what's actually happening with my family, because I have my grandparents there. They are suffering, so definitely I will have a mental effect on my family. My daughter, she asked me, when can I see my grandparents? And I'm asking her, since last 3 years, okay, we will see them this year, see them next year. See, if you feel our feelings, if the world can see the Kashmiri feelings, who are the voiceless, who cannot raise their voice, they've been called terrorists, they've been called separatists, they've been given too many titles.
Yeah.
But what I sum up with a one sentence, what we like is just the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and free our country so we can live with our own will. No matter if we are poor or rich, it doesn't matter for us. The problem is that our life is so psychologically, we are mentally distressed, so oppressed. We cannot think of our right and left. This is the situation of the common person of living in the vicinity of the Srinagar.
This is Brother Liaqat Loan, who is giving a impassioned plea and a voice to the voiceless in Kashmir. He has family there, his parents are there, his daughter's grandparents are there, and because of the media blackout, we are unable to hear their stories. There is an embargo on the journalists. There is no freedom of press. There is no free journalism that is happening there. So we need people who have connections, who are able to get through for a minute or two to hear what is happening on the ground. And the reason why I am saying that is there's one person who is asking, what is your background? So Brother Liaqat, so in terms of his background, he is I would say someone who's a Kashmir activist, and he has family connections to the Indian occupied Kashmir. And this show is dedicated to giving those families that are having the atrocities, that are being persecuted, giving them the voice firsthand. So that is today's show. And next week, which is a part 2 of Kashmir, we are going to be going in detail with a very well-respected uncle of mine by the name of Khurshid Ahmed CBE, who's going to be going into the legislative impact of revoking Article 37, 370 and 35A, and what we can do in order to make the changes. But today is all about, families and the human aspect of last year's revocation by the Indian government for the people of Kashmir. So we talked about journalism. We've talked about the lack of Wi-Fi and broadband in order to get the messages out there, and also the fact that there's there's a black spot. So there's no sort of 2G, 3G. Forget 4G. There's no 2G or 3G at all. I'm now going to move the conversation on to what you said earlier about the economic aspect of this lockdown by the Indian government. So we know in order for any area or any region to succeed and for their prospects to be improved, you need to have something to produce. You need to have some sort of a service industry. As a result of this lockdown from last year, can you tell us a bit more about how people are surviving, how people are getting their income, and what's happened to their family businesses, to their farms, and so on, please?
Okay, good. The Kashmir, as I said to you before, the Kashmir culture is quite biodiverse culture. So you raise a good point here that how the people can live without food and shelter if they've been in a complete lockdown. Absolutely. I tell you, all they do at the moment is they share the food in between themselves. So if they are eating in the morning, they have a breakfast, they might skip the lunch and they do the dinner together. That's how they survive. Sure. And they share this food between the families in one region to another region. And all this fresh produce industry I was talking to you, all these millions of tons apple which they destroy in their field, they are sharing in between their families. They could not sell it because there is no transportation available at the moment. It's a complete blockade. The other thing they can survive on was tourism. Sure. And the tourism is completely closed. And in this, I can only say this is a miracle for us, the Kashmiris, whoever is survived there. I have the experience when the people dig the graves of their loved one in their
backyard.
backyards because they don't have, they've not been allowed to go to the funeral places. And the last Eid, they could not pray into the mosque of the Srinagar because they were not allowed to go there.
Wow.
And it's similar, this time is going to be the similar. What do you expect from the Kashmiris? What do they feel about their surroundings when they are so oppressed and so completely blocked into their rooms?
Yes.
The overall result is, I have one of my friend who is doctor, who is a medical consultant in London. His family is from Srinagar. Last time I spoke to him, he said, my mother is 73-year-old and I'm doctor, but I cannot provide her any medical assistance because she cannot go to hospital. She's suffering at home, 73-year-old woman. She cannot get the medicine. And who do you think is providing the massive medical facilities to those who are in the prisons, like Yasin Malik,
Sure.
who has been in the prison since last 1 year
Yes.
without any medical facilities? This poor man is having a kidney problem, heart transplant, and he is totally he's surviving on the medical facilities. But his daughter, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old daughter, he cannot even talk to her. Since he is married, he only spent 1 month with,
Sure.
with his family. It's not only Yasin Malik. There are thousands of Yasin Malik like him who are suffering. And he's been there in last 1 year. There are people who's been there without any conviction charges since last 20, 25,
Absolutely.
30 years.
Absolutely.
And I would urge the international community from Aapki Awaaz Radio that please raise the voice for us on human rights. The one person who asked you, what's my background? I would say my background is I'm a human being, like everywhere in the world, the human being you see walking around on the
Yes.
streets. So my background is human. If you love human beings, please come and help us. Please raise the voice for us, and please raise your voice against the human rights violation anywhere in the world. No matter what color, creed, nationality or religion we have, we are all human beings and we have a basic right to live with with our will.
Thank you. I'm just going to explore a bit more further about what you said about the, if a patient is feeling ill and they normally go to hospitals, so the doctors and the nurses are there, but what you're saying is that their hands are tied because they don't have the medical supplies and the drugs in order to treat their patients. Is that what you're saying?
It is, yeah, because the hospitals are, when you don't have medicine, even if you have a doctor, what's the doctor going to do?
Absolutely.
You don't have medicine, even if you go there, they will say, sorry, we got nothing for you.
Yeah.
And that's the situation. Some people, like, they need the dialysis for their kidney. Some people, they have the other treatments. And especially the pregnant women need a medical assistance on daily or weekly basis. They have nothing. And I can prove you with the evidence that some women, unfortunately, they died during their pregnancy because they couldn't have those medical assistance provided to them. And I call myself a big democracy in the world. When the internal situation is this, I do not allow anyone to come inside, and I block the Facebook for anyone who is asking for freedom. I block the YouTube channels.
Absolutely.
And I call myself a big democracy. That's a shame. I should rethink twice before I call myself a big democracy. in the world.
Thank you, Brother Liaquat. So we've talked about quite a number of things that are happening in the Indian occupied Kashmir. After the ad break, we are going to talk about how this is impacting women, especially, and also children as well. So we're just going to focus around those two before we then talk about what the future looks like and also what is planned for next Wednesday, if that is okay. We're just going to play a little tune and then come back after a ad break. John Marshall. Yeah, Janab. As always,
Interview ठीक है?
बेहतरीन इसमें very good.
Very good. Well said.
So guys, if you're still watching, if you've got any questions, if you've got any stories yourself that you want to share, this is a platform. We have dedicated a whole hour today and next Tuesday for the people of Kashmir as well. So you know, I have someone who's got family connections in the to the people of Kashmir.
Urdu program on Thursday also.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, my program is in English, but we have another show on Thursday that will be dedicated to Kashmir, but in the Urdu Zaban, in the Urdu language as well. So, just going to go through some of the messages if we can. Again, so I mentioned about the one individual asking what was your background. We have someone saying always a thought-provoking and emotive topic. Absolutely. From Brother Wajid as well. A passionate topic for many from the Kashmir region. Kashmir needs a united voice. Too many people with hidden agendas in different directions for their own, pulling in different directions for their own purposes. Absolutely. Brother Ash, you will never get results until we sort our own agenda out here first. Absolutely. United front is our only hope. That again is from Brother Ash. Zubayda, Sister Zubayda, mashallah, great work, Liaqat brother. And again, on the 5th of August, there are 2 protests on the same day in Birmingham. Should they have one protest? What are your views? So we will get Brother Liaqat to answer that in the last 10-15 minutes of the show, because I still think we want to talk about the emotional and the human aspect. So again, this is about yourselves as well. Please get in touch. The phone number is 0121 682 9735. We're just in an ad break at the moment, so we're just having a lovely cup of tea as always, courtesy of Brother Ikram as well. Again, moving on, just a couple of things out. We will not back off until all our brothers and sisters get their rights. From Sister Zubayda, Brother Ash, all protest for photo shots and for their personal issues. Okay. Thank you, Brother Ash. Brother Ash, please, if you want to dial in, the number is 0121 682 9735. This is a topic I know that you're really passionate about. You know, let's get you on the air and let's hear what you have to say. And you find another one. Everyone wants to be leaders and mess issues of Kashmir. Muhammad M. Khan, thank you for doing in English great work, brother. Thank you. And I think it's important if we want to get the message out to our young brothers, sisters and nephews who are born and bred here. And I think if we are expecting them to be as passionate as someone like Brother Liaqat, they need to be informed. They need to know what's going on. And unfortunately, far too many of us are fighting for the Uyghurs, the Burmese, and for the Palestinians and the Syrians and the Yemenis. But little of a generation are talking about and protesting about Kashmir, which is where their roots are from. So I think we have a duty to share that knowledge and increase the awareness, certainly among the younger population as well, that are born and bred in this country. So I think, we'll move on. So, hello and welcome back to Community Wellbeing Show. My name is Mr. Ali, and today we are dedicating the show to the human and the emotional aspect of the suffering that is taking part in the Indian occupied Kashmir. And who better than someone who has family and personal ties to Kashmir? Brother Liaqat, once again, welcome to Radio Aap Awaaz studios. The first half now was talked about the impact of reversing Article 35A and 370, and also what happens when you have a largest democracy such as India, when they put an embargo on journalists, when there's a blackout when it comes to media as well, and what happens when you put people in jail without any kind of recourse for more than 2 years as well as the economic embargo that is happening to the people of Kashmir. We're now going to move the debate on now and focus on the women and the children as well. So first of all, starting with women, we know in your earlier conversation that the women, our sisters in the Indian occupied Kashmir, are regularly taunted, are regularly verbally abused, are regularly beaten, but also unimaginably they are raped without any kind of recourse as well. Sometimes this is used as a weapon of war in front of their sons, in front of their brothers, in front of their husbands as well, something that is really unimaginable. So please, if you could just talk about what is it like for a woman to be living in Indian occupied Kashmir?
As I mentioned before, they don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable, especially when the army raids happens nighttime and they take all the gentlemen to the prison. And I can give you an example of Kunan Pashpura,
please,
where 300 women were raped by Indian army. This is the worst example in the history, and Amnesty International quoted it, and Human Rights Watch quoted this Kunan Pashpura incident.
When was this?
It was in 2010 or 11. I don't know the exact date. I do apologize. But that's what happened. 300 women were raped in one night in the village called Kunan Pashpura in Srinagar.
Yeah.
And the normal women, they in our culture, the ladies, they totally depend on the men for their earnings and all these kind of things. But when their loved ones are in the prison, the women get more pressure economically to feed her children. And I can give you the hundreds of examples. If you go on Facebook and go on YouTube and go on Google and Google it around, and you will see a lot of examples what's happening. Because if I say something, maybe somebody say, look, I'm making my own story.
Sure.
But I would like to give you the reference of United Nations Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International reports. Please read them and see what's actually happening in the streets of Srinagar. Now, when the new tactics now Indian Army started, this is started from last year now. What they do, they just make this incident like, okay, we have militant there, and they burn all the houses. And in the houses, all property is burned. People have their belongings.
Sure.
They have nothing to left. And they say, look, we have militants. Where are those militants? We never had any evidence of it. You say militants, and what about the 1 million army you have in the streets of the Srinagar, who is oppressing the innocent children? Give me an example where in the world we make the victim, the school-going children, they go to school and mother, she is worried because she is lucky if the son or daughter come back without a pellet gun, victim of their children.
Sure.
So this is what's happening. Now people are so fed up, even the schools are open, they're not safe enough. They don't want to send their children to school when anyone can make them suffer with the pellet guns. And this is only happening in Kashmir. Nowhere in the world you will have those examples. You see World War I, World War II, where 1 million people died, but you will never get the examples like the Kashmir. So this is the situation. The woman of Indian occupied Kashmir is depressed, mentally tortured, doesn't feel safe enough to live there, just because when the family is suffering with these all brutalities, which I gave you the example, and I gave you the recognized institutions reference. So this is what we feel. This is what my mother feel if she was living in the streets of Srinagar. We don't have the freedom like we have here or anywhere else in the world. All the time we think is, oh, a bomb blast, or a house on fire, or a pallet victim, or a rape, or something like that. This is our life. And now there's nothing else coming in the mind of a Kashmiri born man or a woman, because they are so suffered now. They got used to it now because they don't have a choice. So I urge from your radio, all those human lovers, all those who are listening to my voice now, to please come out and raise the voice for those who cannot speak, who
Yes.
don't have the access to the international media. You are their voice, I'm their voice. So we have to raise our voice for those who are in the complete blockade since last 12 months. Thank you.
No, absolutely. I'm going to move on the conversation to some other figures that I have. I was doing some research for this show. So since the start of this year, so 1st of January 2020, there have been 229 killings so far to date. There have been 32 extrajudicial killings. So again, you know, at point blank, they will shoot someone without any recourse. And there have been 2,303 arrests. These are people that are now in prisons, and they can be there for 2 years without any kind of charge, without any kind of court case. And this is the situation that the people of Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir, are living with. I will be reading out your comments, so just give me just a short couple of minutes before I move the conversation on now to the young children. You already mentioned that the parents are very reluctant to send their children most of the time. The teachers aren't there, the schools are closed. So they are now being deprived of education, the next generation. We know how important education is in order for a region or a state to, certainly have its prospects improved. But also, I think this was 3 years ago, there were 329 young people under the age of 18 that were blinded by these pellets that you talked about.
Yeah, I would like to show this one. This is how the Kashmiri children are in the schools, colleges. That's what the pellet gun do with their eyes. They lose their body parts forever. And this is totally, I give you an example. If you see, 1,000 children blinded by the pellet guns, 10,000, more than 10,000 enforced disappearances, 10,000 and more than 10,000 women being raped, and 98,000 plus killings happened in last 30 years in Kashmir. So now what's the outcome? The outcome is, the only solution is the talk, not the gun.
Yes.
From both sides.
Yeah.
So I urge the international community and the national community to bring the both atomic powers on a table to talk about those 20 million Kashmiris to have their say. That's the only solution. We have wars, nothing happens. We have all this last 72 years, India and Pakistan grabbing on Kashmir, but nothing happens. What happens? Only the Kashmiri suffers for their loved ones. They lost their loved ones, they lost their property, they lost their lives.
Yes.
The only solution would be the international community must bring both of these atomic powers on the table and talk on Kashmir. Otherwise, my concern is, if it goes beyond the control, then whole the world will suffer like us, and I don't want to see everyone suffering like us. I urge the international community, act now.
Thank you, Brother Liaquat. And we've now coming up to 45 minutes into the show. And as always, I did say that we are now going to open up the airways. So the first, 3/4 of the show, it was all about the human and the emotional aspect. Now it is, whatever question that you want to ask myself or Brother Liaquat, please ask away. With regards to the two protests, we will come to that. I'm just going to read out a couple of comments before we do. From our regular viewer, Steve Lawrence. Also, many white British people need to know the history, and I think it is not known, and therefore they say nothing as they want to. I don't know if you remember, I was at a function with you last year where I actually said the same thing. I know we have these protests. You telling me and me telling you about what's happening in Kashmir, it's little or no impact. We need to get this message to the white indigenous community, because they believe in human rights. They will be our voice. They will take this all the way to 10 Downing Street. And until we do that, nothing will happen. So that was just one point. I'm not asking you to respond, but just to make that point. Brother Wajid, we need to get young people to come forward and take up the cause of Kashmir with the same passion shown by those fighting for the cause of Palestinians. And brothers need to do more programs in English and motivate people and our young brothers and sisters on issues of Kashmir. Sajid Nawaz Khan, India is a terrorist state and military occupation in occupied Kashmir. So one of our listeners said at the start of the program that there are too many people with a vested interest with their self agendas. I'm going to put that. Is that why Kashmir isn't being solved? Because people are there for their own selfies, for their own motivations, for their own egos.
I will never say that we are goody-goody. I would take that responsibility and the accountability being a Kashmiri and being a political activist. We must stand united on one cause, which is freedom of our country.
Yes.
We have confused the international community, unfortunately, and I myself make accountable for that as well. I urge all the communities, all the political leaders, all the Kashmiri community to come on one point and come on one point, which is the freedom that they call Azadi, and we call it in English, we call it freedom. And that's the only one point which can make us united. And I will give you an example because when I work in a political field, I have this discussion within my party circle as well, that we need to come united. Otherwise, if we fight in between these small groups, we cannot achieve our national goal. For that reason, I myself sacrificed my political flag and I put it on a side, and I come out and I urge every single Kashmiri here in United Kingdom to come forward, come on one point agenda and make one slogan of freedom. So that's why wherever is my responsibility and accountability, I have no problem to make an improvement. If we have done something, that's our failure. But there is no end. We can start. If your daughter or your son, which my niece or nephew, can lead me, I have no problem to go on the back bench and lead them. If our children can go and start the Palestinians campaign, why can't they start the Kashmiri campaign? Absolutely. I urge all the young boys and girls, please come forward, and we are happy to make you the leaders, and we can follow you in the universities, in the colleges, in the community. If we can be councillors, we can be lords, we can be MPs, why can't we can lead our nation on one point agenda? So on a political side, I will say yes, we are responsible for this division and we shouldn't be. And for that reason, I give you an example that we have all parties meeting with regards to all these problems, and we made a decision that from now on, you have seen in last 2-3 years, all these protests we done here in United Kingdom, we done on British Kashmiri Forum.
Yes.
So any person who belongs to that Jammu Kashmir state has the right to raise their voice. No political slogans, no political party flags, no political speeches, only one slogan, one track is for our freedom struggle and our national freedom completely. Secondly, when we say we need to prove with our actions. So when I say yes, I agree with you that we must be united, then I have to sacrifice my personal ego. Absolutely. Okay? So then I have to make myself ready to follow you, no matter what color, creed or political view you have. So for that reason, I will urge all the political leaders in United Kingdom who are from the Jammu Kashmir state here, who are actively participating, all the community leaders, all the religious scholars, to come on one point. And where is Liaquat Lone's role? I will play my role, but where is your role? You have to play your role.
Thank you, Brother Liaquat. I'm now going to ask the follow-up question to that. Last year was very chaotic. We had, on the same day, 2 different protests happening at 2 different locations, and then that went on to 2 different protests happening on consecutive days, and then next Wednesday we now have 2 protests on the same day at 2 different locations, one being outside the council house, one being outside the Indian embassy. How did this situation arise?
Okay. First of all, for your viewers and for yourself and for all the people of United Kingdom, all these protests which are going to be held on 5th of August 2020. They are organized by British Kashmiris. There is no political party.
Yes.
If somebody is saying, I am organizing, they are lying. These protests are under one flag of British Kashmiris. The second question is why we are having two protests in Birmingham. The protest which is going to be held in Indian consulate, and one is in Council Hall. If you see the COVID-19 situation and the rules and regulation introduced by
Sure.
the British government, we have to follow them. For that reason, when we have our first meeting, we discuss this, that we need social distancing, okay? For that reason, we choose, okay, we're going to do protest in Council Hall, the city center.
Sure.
Then the people raise this question, okay, the actual venue should be the Indian consulate. Why we are doing here? Because we already applied for this and we got the permission. We asked them to apply for the permission.
Sure.
And we can do both venues, and then we walk from one side to another and we meet on the one place where we end up this protest. It doesn't mean there is two protests. This is one protest.
Sure.
Organized on two different places. We don't leave any venue vacant on that day, because we are doing this protest in London, we are doing in Bradford, we are doing in Manchester, we are doing in Birmingham. So the only reason we are doing these 3-4 protests is because of the COVID-19 situation. We cannot transport people from north to south.
Yes.
And for that reason, we make the people's, our concern is health and safety of the people. Protest doesn't matter to me. I can delay the protest. For my concern is health and safety for my family and somebody else's family. If my family cannot travel from here to London, it's not safe for them. I would prefer my family to do protest in Birmingham.
Sure.
So we decided all the south parts of the country, they will do protest in London. All the Midlands, they do in Birmingham.
Yes.
All the north will do in Bradford and Manchester. And this is all under one flag of British Kashmiris. So if somebody do in other small cities, we don't stop them.
Sure.
They can raise their voice.
Absolutely.
But what I urge our British Kashmiris here is, please do not keep silence. It does make an effect when you raise your voice in the streets of United Kingdom. It does give the motivation to the people who are in the street of Srinagar. When they see you on the Facebook, when they see on the telly, somebody is raising the voice, it does keep them motivated.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody is there to raise our voice.
I like your answer, and it makes sense, because obviously, we have to be mindful that there may be people with, people of age, people with health conditions, and we need to maintain social distancing. So we ask everyone that is going to be turning up on Wednesday, wear your masks, keep your social distancing, and by all means, give your slogans out there, but put your own egos to one side. And you are here representing and giving the voice to the people of Kashmir, nothing more, nothing less. And the plan is for if someone wants to go to outside the council house, feel free to do so. If they want to go outside the Indian embassy in Birmingham, they will do, and they can do so. I like what you're doing. That there's no disharmony there. You are talking about a united front. And I suppose if those people, the two things actually, if someone wants to come and wants to give a speech or wants to do something, what I'm a bit tired of is the same old people hugging the mic and doing their own thing. How do we get maybe more women, more young people giving their side of the story, especially from Indian occupied Kashmir, because that's the voice that we want to get out there. And secondly, was for those people that aren't able to go there, maybe because of work or because they are shielding for whatever, what can they do by staying at home? How can they get involved?
Very good question. I would love to answer this question. If somebody cannot join us, please, you have access to internet, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have WhatsApp. Click share, raise your voice, tweet on the Twitter. We stand with Kashmiris. Kashmir needs attention.
Sure.
You can make your voice heard even sitting on your bed. If you are medically unfit, you are in quarantine, you are in isolation, you can still be part of our protest. Whoever are whoever is joining us on the day of protest, I must say, please come with your masks. I show you here. Everybody, please. For us, your life is important, and the regulations are that we cannot go in the social gathering without mask and gloves. If somebody is there without mask, we might have to escalate them, or we provide them the mask. But I can't provide 5,000 people, every single person mask. Be responsible, be accountable for your action. I would request all the community, when they leave their home for the protest, come with their mask. And when they are on the protest venue, we do have volunteers, but they're not in thousands, maybe 20, 30 people. But if they're asking you to move and keep your social distancing, please listen to them. Keep your social distancing at least 1 to 2 meters, and you can make your voice heard. Secondly, who else cannot come to the protest, they can raise their voice from home through internet. And thirdly, the people who are asking about the community issues, all like you raised the question about speeches, especially when we make speeches between ourselves, is the term they use for the convert. You are trying to convert the converted. Yeah. I would love to hear a speech from somebody from an English community.
Absolutely.
Yeah, who talk about my issue. If I make a speech, you make a speech, and then this is just a political projection. I am against of it. So when we have our first meeting, we said, look, guys, we're not going to make any political speeches there. We will give a chance to somebody else who can raise our voice. If I have my local MP there, I would love to ask him to come forward and have his say. If I have my somebody from any international background, I would love to make him a speech. But when I make a speech, another political leader comes, make a speech, third one comes, then we have this fight between us. So I don't want to do that. That's why we said no speeches. But if there is somebody who wants to speak about Kashmir, we will not stop him. But the problem is, we need to understand what are we saying and what message we are going to give international community. Lastly, I must say, please, every single Kashmiri who is out on 5th of August is our ambassador. When you come out, please behave like a responsible citizen. Please behave like a mature person. So when somebody asks you for a social distance, please listen to them. Do your social caring. Do use your mask, and do follow the this country law and rules and regulation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to read out some comments, and they are going to be unfiltered, so I will read them as it is. And then I'm going to finish off the show by giving you 30 seconds for the future of Kashmir and what your hopes are, if we can. So starting off with Muhammad Khan, we still not unite together. We need to grow and wake up and get together. Hans Mahmood, Wajid Hussain Blati, brother, everyone wants to be a hero. Nothing can help Kashmir, and it is only one is Allah. Moving on. Claire Bidwell, God helps those who help themselves. Let's unite and show that. Absolutely well said, Claire. Ash Zaman Aftab said in the beginning, doing Birmingham, these guys wanted to do in London first in meeting, now they want to lead. London was the call, but COVID is having impact. Thank you, Claire, again. Hans Mahmood, Ash Zaman, bro, it's all a joke. When I ask someone, people from the masjid, come we pray for Kashmir, not one person is willing to do that. I wonder why. Ash is being a voice for someone else. Bro, I need to. Ash Zaman, I did ask you to come onto the show, and I gave you the phone number as well. So you are more than welcome to. And the last comment by Claire, again, Claire Bidwell. Well done, Lone. Best of luck for the 5th. Glad to hear all will be united. And if I can put a request out there to Claire, if you can be part of the protest, I'm going to ask Brother Liaquat, if you want to come and sort of share your views, please. We need, people like yourselves, women. We need people that are Asians to take the fore and take this, the message out there. So as I said, please, Brother Liaquat, if you can, just give us a message for the future, what your hopes are for the people of Kashmir moving forward.
First of all, thank you very much to Claire Bidwell, who is raising our voice internationally and nationally. I already requested her on social media if she can attend one of our protests in Birmingham or London. If she can't, then there is a protest in Ireland, in the city of Limerick.
Wow.
On the same day. I can provide her the full address. She can raise our voice there. And even if she can't do with any of the reason, she can raise our voice from her desk using social media. Secondly, my message to the Kashmiris in United Kingdom especially, and human lovers all over the country is, please, on 5th of August, please come out and raise the voice for the voiceless, innocent children who are the victim of pellet guns, innocent women who are the victim of rape, elderly patients who are seeking for medical assistance, and all 20 million Kashmiris who are hopeless under the complete siege of Indian army. I would urge all the national and international community to raise our voice nationally and internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Liaquat. I'm going to impose on Mr. Badshaw and Mr. Mirza. Ash, if you want to call into the show, 01216829735, you have 30 seconds because the next presenter is on, but I'm going to impose on them if I can, whilst I'm waiting for your call. I'm just going to read out some more. Claire Bidwell, well done, Lone. Best of luck for the 5th. Glad to hear all will be united. Ash Zaman, I was busy. Well, that's why I'm giving you 30 seconds. Steve, thank you for tonight. He has given me more of an insight, and that is Steve Lawrence. Thank you. And that was the aim of today's show. So as far as I'm concerned, the show was successful if we have got the message to the likes of Claire, to the likes of Steve as well. I'm off to Glasgow for mine, I think, next time. Again, absolutely. Thank you, Claire. Wajid, great program. Thanks to Brother Liaquat. Ali phoned me after the show. I'm more than happy. I will raise my voice on the street and all platforms on social media. So for me, as always, I like to also give my concluding remark, and my message is, wherever you are, please get involved in whatever capacity. Ideally, we want you out and about. If you are well enough, if you are practicing social distancing, come out, let the people of Indian occupied Kashmir know that we are your voices, we are your arms and legs, and until you are there and we are here, until we have a soul, we have breath in our soul, we will continue to voice our voice against the injustice that you are experiencing. If you aren't able to come, please use the power of the electoral system here. Write to your councillor, write to your MP, and ask your MP to turn up as well. And I'm sure that the organisers will go and give them a platform. And this is not just a 5th of August fight. This is something that we should be doing day in, day out for all of the year as well. So on that note, this was just part 1 of my 2-part series on Kashmir. Next week we have Uncle Khurshid Ahmed from Dudley to come and talk about the intricacies of Article 35A and 370 and what's happened as a result of revoking, and what we can do in order to mobilise and lobby in order to get things moving, maybe with the elected representatives and on the international basis. So on that note, thank you as always for all your support, for all your listeners, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So God bless, look after yourselves and of each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye now. Bye. Allah Hafiz.